It's day 319. It's also March 20th, 2020, and we are in Guin, Alabama. You ever wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what am I doing? And more importantly, why? Yeah, me too. Hi, my name's Craig, and this is my story. A story about life out there. For visuals while listening, search Life Out There on your favorite social media platform or use the links in the podcast description. Dang, this pandemic thing. News kind of hits you like a ton of bricks every dang morning. The world can't shut up about it. And of course they can't. When you hear things like, California governor issues an unprecedented stay-at-home order. Argentina has issued a nationwide mandatory quarantine order, adding themselves to a growing list, like France, Italy, and India. And Italy has surpassed China in total number of deaths. On March 11th, the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic. And today, 8 days later, reported cases have crossed over 158,000, with China, Italy, and Iran accounting for 115,000 of those. Over here, we're coming up on 2,000 of our own. But what I keep hearing is reported cases. How many cases are there really? And they keep talking about not having enough tests. And where would I even get one? And then, such a random thought. Had I already had it? I remembered that stay in Vidalia, Louisiana. Episode 46, I think. That stormy, early January night when I woke up soaked in sweat, dizzy, coughing. It only seemed to last a couple of days, but so sudden, so random. Was that COVID? I guess if there is an upside here, it's that the boys and I are already pretty much keeping to ourselves. Dang Dougie better not give me COVID. And it has not taken us long to slip right back into old habits, get off the beaten track, and explore the back roads of Georgia and Alabama. And it is so cool to watch the changes in scenery with every mile. Gone are those super big, huge old oak trees draped in Spanish moss all around us back there in St. Mary's. And those wide open marshlands that seamlessly blend into the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean. And how fast all of that had changed as we drove away from the coast and into the heartland of Georgia. Now, it's groves and hollows filled with pine and poplar trees. 100-foot bridges that cross not rivers, but stunning displays of cherry tree blossoms. Definitely signaling an early start to spring around here. And we'd driven past places like Macon and Pooler. That's where I learned that Macon is often referred to as the cherry blossom capital of the world. Now, I guess that explains the scenery around here. And that one stretch of Georgia Highway 17, just outside Noonan, we were driving through rolling hills populated with working cattle ranches when, just a couple miles up the road, on the opposite side, a vineyard stretching against that backdrop of lush green grasses as far back into those rolling hills as we could see. And all of this within about a 300-mile stretch. And crossing over into Alabama, not much changes at first, but then transitions from rolling hills, sometimes wooded, sometimes not, into foothills, and so tempting to turn north and into Alabama's version of the mountains, those Appalachian Mountains. But, pandemic and all, best keep going, I told myself. And then we found ourselves once again pulling those steep grades while passing semis, and rolling back down the other side, getting out of the way of those very same semis. And Vacilando is indeed feeling a lot more athletic, having shed that 5,000 pounds. And then, Tupelo, Mississippi, just 50 miles up the road. Memphis, Tennessee, not so very far beyond that. But I couldn't resist the urge to exit the freeway at County Road 44. Just a small 2-lane winding through the Alabama countryside. We needed to find a camping spot for the evening, and, as usual, not in the RV park sort of mood. The skies had been threatening thunderstorms since Birmingham, and it was kind of feeling like they were about to deliver. And the rain was getting heavier. So I thought it best to find a spot way before nightfall. We did a quick pit stop under an overpass. Dougie needed to stretch his legs, and I didn't want to stand in the rain. And the whole stop was pretty funny, actually, because we pulled out from under that overpass, and less than a mile up the road, perfect, a large pullout, to the left of the road. A dirt road went further back in up there. I could see large excavation equipment back in there. They're working on building something. But things were getting pretty wet. We wouldn't be doing any exploring on a dirt road tonight. And as I write this, the rains are actually letting up a little. Maybe we'll get to skip out on a thunderstorm, for which Dougie will be unknowingly grateful. I know how much he hates those boom booms. And we'd seen nothing more than a few houses in the last few miles. No sign of a town. I didn't even know where we were until I checked, and the phone said Guin, Alabama. The internet tells me Guin is a charming little town located in Marion County, Alabama. Population 2,000 or so. And it looks like they picked a pretty cool spot for the place, too. Just the right amount of quiet. Tupelo, 50 miles in one direction. Birmingham, 80 miles up the road in another. Plenty of big city if they needed it. And it looks like the area has been pretty popular for a very long time. Archaeological evidence of Native American presence dates back some 10,000 years around here. It was the Cherokee, the Choctaw, Creek, and Chickasaw people that would discover and be the first to inhabit the area. They were drawn to the abundance of natural resources, those rich fertile soils, thick, expansive forests that meant plenty of hunting and trapping opportunity, and the abundance of water, rivers, lakes, meant plenty of drinking water, tons of fishing, and even transportation. And these traits would continue to drive the area's popularity as Europeans arrived, furthering the trapping and trade practice in the area. The French would arrive here a little before the Spanish, actually, but neither maintained a dominant presence. The area would remain primarily inhabited by Native Americans until American settlement, when the U.S. began issuing land grants in the region. And in 1870, Dr. Jeremiah Guin, a young guy from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, would migrate 60 miles or so, acquire land, and later donate a significant portion of it to the town, which incorporated in his name in 1889. And looking around here, the hills, the woods, the open pasture, I wondered what it felt like here in Guin as America began its long and painful journey down that path from slavery to integration after the Civil War. Well, along the way, Guin would gain a railway station and establish the first public high school in the region in 1912. And just a year later, in 1913, the town would see its first automobile dealership, bringing Guin into the nation's second industrial revolution. And agriculture has always been a primary driver in the region's economy. But in 1955, 3M opened a plant here introducing production to the mix. The plant is still in operation today, but in recent years has had some legal challenges. And I had a flashback to what I had read about Motorola and their plants in Scottsdale, Arizona, and the groundwater contamination issues. And just like over there, here in Guin, it's 3M working to repair and restore the damage done by years of harmful chemicals being introduced into the area's groundwater. And it's also interesting that here in Guin, I'd stumble onto the topic of prohibition and learn that Alabama would pass prohibition into law in 1907, over a decade before the federal ban of alcohol. And apparently, here in Alabama, they meant it. That 1907 ban is still in place. But in 2010, Guin was the first town in Marion County to vote to legalize the sale of alcohol, making Guin one of only 55 cities in the state of Alabama in which you can buy yourself a beer. But then, with everything happening, trying to do a better job of keeping up on the news, I flipped on the television this evening, and it wasn't about the pandemic. I caught the end of a story and learned of Ahmaud Arbery. Now, it kept my attention, well, for a lot of reasons, but a couple in particular. First, Ahmaud, a 25-year-old black man that was chased through a subdivision in Brunswick, Georgia, by 3 white men and then shot and killed. Brunswick was just 40 miles or so from St. Mary's. I had driven through it on my way to Jekyll Island. And in fact, the odds were pretty good that I was out walking with Dougie that February afternoon in St. Mary's. At the very same time, Ahmaud, just 40 miles away in Brunswick, was being chased and killed. The other thing that struck me was when I heard the term modern-day lynching. Now, admittedly, I'm kinda hypersensitive to the word lynching at the moment. Not that the concept ever felt all right in any way, but having just spent an evening learning of Sam Hose and the horrifying events that took place during his murder, a lynching. And I've also since read that we will never know the actual number of innocent black people that were tortured and killed in ways that should literally be unimaginable to a human, but are not. For every one of those tragedies that we know of, there's hundreds more that we will never know of. And I think I was imagining all those humans while hearing Ahmaud's story and hearing the word lynching again, but this time being used to describe a series of events in the year 2020. And having heard only part of the news story, well, I immediately went online. And what I watched and what I heard? A 25-year-old black man, an avid runner, was out for his afternoon jog. And he frequently jogged through a subdivision called Satilla Springs in Brunswick. Within the subdivision, there was a home under construction. The work on it had stalled out for some reason, and the building had sat vacant for quite some time. And it was not uncommon for Ahmaud to stop and go walk through the home under construction, and then continue on his run. This is actually pretty well documented because the owner of the home had installed cameras throughout the project, and Ahmaud could be seen on multiple occasions walking through it. He never took anything. I don't know if there was anything to take. The home was wide open, didn't even have all of its doors yet. And he never vandalized anything. From what I saw, he never touched anything. But it turns out, this surveillance footage of Ahmaud and others had apparently been shared online in a neighborhood community forum. And on this particular day, a man that lived across the street, a white guy, was standing behind a tree watching Ahmaud. He had seen the surveillance footage, and he called 911 to report Ahmaud. The 911 operator tells him that she'll send someone out, but it would be very helpful if he could tell her what the man was doing wrong. And he couldn't. A short while later, Ahmaud would run by the home of two other residents of the subdivision. They'd also seen the footage. A father and son, white guys. They watched Ahmaud run by. And, well, honestly, the sequence of events from this point are just so outside normal in my brain that I don't think anyone, except those two guys, will ever know why they decided that on February 23rd, Ahmaud's behavior was unacceptable, and they needed to grab their guns, get in their truck, and chase Ahmaud. And it keeps getting weirder. Ahmaud would pass by the home of another white guy, this one out on his front porch working. And this guy, well, he watched Ahmaud run by. And the two white guys drove by in a pickup, chasing, yelling at Ahmaud, one standing in the bed of the pickup holding a gun. And after seeing this guy number 3, he decides that he needed to get in his pickup and join the chase. And the rest, well, why I even know about it, is obvious. Ahmaud's dead. I'll put a link in the show notes for anyone interested in the full detail. And yes, there is a whole lot more to this story. There always is. Murder can tend to be complicated. In the last 24 hours, I've read stories that have literally changed me forever. Of course I'd heard of lynching, but I had no idea what lynching really was and really is. And I know that we have come so far. The individual experiences of Sam Hose and Ahmaud Arbery are very, very different. And I'd hoped that they would be, given the span of time and history between the two. But regardless, in my mind, of how far we've come, there's a pretty inescapable truth here. 120 years ago, in Noonan, Georgia, a group of white men decided that a 24-year-old black man had done something wrong, so they killed him. And on February 23rd, 2020, in Brunswick, Georgia, a group of white men had decided that a 25-year-old black man had done something wrong, so they killed him. Ugh. I gotta go to bed. Quick walk with Dougie. Maybe I'll study the map a bit and determine what route we'll take in the morning. At least those springtime showers are letting up here on a 65-degree evening in the heart of the South, Alabama. Good night.
Turns out, this thing called life comes with a lot of rules. Maybe it's time to break a few. Because you can. No, seriously. You can.